So, how many of you, by a show of hands, know somebody who suffers from infertility? Ah, all right. So that's about right. In the Jewish community, I'm not sure if you're aware, but 1 in 6 Jewish couples suffer from infertility, and that's a little different than the national average, which is 1 in 8. And the reasons for that are age, education, and if you go downstairs to the J screen table, you'll learn more about some of our Jewish genetic diseases. And that's part of the reason that the statistic is a little bit different. So my story is that I grew up in a typical middle-class Jewish family in Atlanta, Georgia. I went to day school, I went to college, I went to graduate school. I did my stint on the Upper West Side where we got to work together and meet. I met my bashert a little later in life. I was 29, and we were going to have 10,000 babies together because that's what we were going to do. I was so excited, and my story didn't go exactly as planned. After we got married, we decided to make Aliyah. We moved to northern Israel, and that's when we really started trying to have babies, and it was not fun. The type of person that likes to be able to get things done pretty quickly. And I know that about myself. And it was not working. So only after a few months of really trying, I went to the doctor in Israel and I told them what was going on. And they didn't really do any testing, but they quickly put me on Clomid. And that helped to stimulate my ovulation cycle. So I knew I was going to get pregnant right away. I already bought pregnancy tests and I was like checking every month and I was not getting pregnant. And sex was not fun. It was not fun for me. It was not fun for my husband. Sorry, men in the back. But it was not fun. I remember lying on my bed with my legs up in the air. Like, it was not fun. Scheduled sex is not fun for men or for women. And I wasn't getting pregnant. And I was not telling anybody. My friends were getting pregnant, having babies. I started kind of isolating myself. I wasn't going to many brisses. I didn't want to hang around my friends with kids. And I really wasn't talking about it with people. I was on hormones, so I was getting heavier, and it looked like I was pregnant, and people were asking me if I was pregnant. And I mean, that's gone on for 10 years, but it was tough. It was really, really tough. But finally, I did confide in my aunt, who in Israel worked in the medical system, and she said, okay, well, do you know how to have sex? And I'm like, oh my God, like I can't believe she's asking me this. And she's like, just go on a vacation, relax, it'll happen. And I'm like, I don't think that's what's happening, but the internet even 10 years ago wasn't what it is today in terms of me Googling or going on social media. And I literally thought I was the only person in the world who was not getting pregnant. I didn't know anybody else who was struggling. And so I went to my aunt and she's like, well, call this doctor, go to this doctor. And in Israel, socialized medicine, you shouldn't be paying for your services, but I'm American. And so I found this doctor and he accepted me into his home office in the evenings. And so I was driving 1 hour away to Haifa and going to his home office. And my husband and I were writing checks. He never checked me. He would make my husband go in the bathroom, do what he needed to do. And he would do IUIs, intrauterine inception. And he would do, it's like the turkey baster method. And he was doing them to me month after month. And again, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get pregnant. Still that hope. I was hopeful every single month, and I would be let down every single month. And this time it was a little harder because something was actually happening to my body now. I was taking hormones and I knew that he was inseminating me and I still was not getting pregnant. And we were writing checks now, even though it was nothing compared to the American prices, but we were writing checks. After months and months and months of doing this, again, I didn't know medically what I should or shouldn't be doing because we weren't talking about it. My husband and I are like, something's not right. Like, we just didn't feel like something was right, and we found another doctor. And this was our miracle doctor. So the very first thing he did for us after we finally got an appointment was check to see if my tubes were blocked. It's a very painful procedure if your tubes are blocked. He told me I was getting an x-ray. Maybe it didn't translate. And I remember, again, sorry, men, but I remember I was wearing a thong underwear and TMI, I know, but it was a very painful procedure and it was a very messy procedure. And it was not just an x-ray. Moral of the story is he immediately saw my tubes are blocked. I'm not going to get pregnant naturally, and I'm not going to get pregnant through IUIs. I would have had a very big problem if I had gotten pregnant. I would have had an ectopic pregnancy. And the doctor never checked me. Luckily, it's Israel. He typed on his computer, and I was eligible for IVF, in vitro fertilization. So that's when they take the eggs out of me, through lots of hormones, in a surgical procedure where I'm asleep, mix it with my husband's sperm, and create embryos. So outside of my body, and then they put them again in another procedure inside your body. And it's a big deal. It's not, you hear people doing IVF. It's a really big deal. It's a big deal physically, emotionally. And luckily, I got pregnant twice. And both times they were twins. In the end, we lost one of them each time. Early on, it was okay at the time. And I have a 6 and 7-year-old from each of those now. But my story doesn't end there. For the past 5 years, I would say it was even harder. I had 2 kids, but yet I felt guilty that I didn't feel like I was done. Remember, we were supposed to have 1 million babies. And we moved back to America at that time, and I had extra embryos in the freezer in Israel. So I didn't need my husband anymore, but I was going back and forth. So I was traveling from America to Israel. At this point, I wasn't paying my national insurance, so I was doing medical tourism. So it's still significantly less expensive than in America. An American price tag, just so you know, for IVF is about $23,000, where I'm from now in Atlanta, but it ranges from $14,000 up. And most states don't have any insurance coverage, which is what we're working on, to cover any treatments. Only 16 states now have any sort of insurance coverage. So I was going back and forth to Israel, and it was not working. I used up the rest of my embryos, and kind of my husband was like, okay, we're done. And I didn't know what to do. So again, a little bit more convincing, and I'm like, no, our family is not done yet. So I convinced him to try adoption, because you're infertile, so people just say, just adopt. I don't know if you guys have heard this. It's not easy. We failed at adoption. We tried for about 2 years, and we couldn't afford to be able to go to an adoption clinic because it's really expensive. It's about $30,000 starting. And international adoption today is just not what it used to be, and it's more expensive. And then we looked at the foster care system. We learned a little bit about ourselves. My husband wanted to adopt for altruistic reasons, so he wanted to adopt a child, an older child who needed us. And I learned about myself. I just wanted a baby. I wanted a baby that I could raise as my own, and just a baby. And it was really, really hard on our marriage. It was really tough. And there were many times when I didn't know if we were going to make it because I wanted this baby, sometimes more than I knew I wanted to be able to be married. And I still had 2 little kids that I was taking care of, but these thoughts consumed me. It's all consuming when you're going through this. And so then, failure of adoptions after failure of adoptions. I mean, one person even called me. I'm like, I'm Elana. I run a fertility organization. I should be able to find a baby on my own. And somebody once called me, and they're like, a birth parent. They're like, do you have acreage with farms on it and horses? And I'm like, no. They're like, are you a good Christian family? No. Well, we don't want anybody who has biological kids because you're going to love your biological kids more than you're going to love our kid. So failure after failure. But at this time, somebody who I had helped a few years prior, she was a single mom by choice, and I helped her figure out how she was going to grow her family. And she called me about 1.5 years ago, and she said, listen, I have 2 children now. I feel so lucky. I want to donate my embryos. So I tried to match her for a few months, and I couldn't find her the right person. And then one day I was like, well, what about me? And again, working with my husband, the first thing that came to his mind was how much is it going to cost? Because that was his way of coping with all of this. So he was saying, how much is this going to cost? And that was his first thing. And basically, it was about $10,000, which is a lot less than adoption, which is a lot less than starting over from the beginning to do IVF. And it was a hard, long 1.5 years, but today I have a 15-week-old. So So that's my journey, and it is rough. It was 10 years. I have 3 kids, thank God, and I feel blessed. But when I moved back to America from Israel was really the first time I started talking about anything. I was very quiet when I was living in Israel, but it became a little easier when you have kids to start talking about this. And I quickly understood I'm not alone, and also that people were going into debt. We're begging their parents, their friends for money, or some not even having children at all, just to do fertility treatments. And so my background is in nonprofit. I've done fundraising and marketing, and I said, wow, let's help people raise money to have babies. And from that point, that was in 2015, we created an advisory board, which turned into a board of directors, which turned into a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We piloted in Atlanta, Georgia, and we created the Jewish Fertility Foundation. So today, we are offering 3 types of services. One is we offer fertility grants, and we give $1,000 to $10,000 grants. We offer interest-free loans in partnership with our local interest-free loan association, and we offer discounted rates from all participating fertility clinics. With our grant, you could get about $20,000 in services. We've given out, I think, 38 grants. We have over 10 babies from our grants, 6 women pregnant now. But it's not only about the money, it's about the emotional support as well. So we offer traditional fertility support groups run by infertility therapists. We offer a fertility buddies program. We match up peer to peer. So you guys who have been through this could be our fertility buddies, being matched up with somebody who's going through it now. In Atlanta, our pilot city, we have over 80 people in that program right now. And then we do educational trainings. We do trainings for rabbis, mikvah attendants, as well as the reproductive endocrinologists and their staff around infertility sensitivity trainings, as well as cultural competency trainings, how Jewish people who are going through infertility might be a little bit different in their needs, mostly in the observant communities. But we've expanded. We're in Cincinnati now, and our plans are to continue to grow to community-based organizations and spaces where they can really sustain themselves. So thank you, and thank you for Hadassah's amazing work.